Welcome back to Fiction Flux. We're kicking off something brand new today, and trust me, it's going to be a wild ride. This fanfic is going to be different from anything we've done before. Imagine Deku getting teleported to the world of Demon Slayer, but that's not all. In this story, Deku doesn't just become a part of the Demon Slayer Corps, he also finds himself surrounded by a massive harem, with the stunning Shinobu leading the way. Intrigued? I bet you are. So, let's not waste any more time and dive right into it. Izuku Midoriya had always dreamed of becoming a hero. Born without a quirk in a world where everyone had one, he never imagined a reality like this. One day, while walking through the streets of Musudafu, a sudden surge of energy hit him, and before he knew it, he was falling through a vortex of light. His surroundings shifted in an instant, and when the world settled, he found himself standing in an entirely different place, a dense forest, surrounded by towering mountains, the air thick with the scent of moss and earth. He had no idea where he was or how he got there. As he looked around, disoriented, a figure appeared before him. A tall man with long black hair, dressed in traditional clothes and carrying a sword. His presence was calm but intense, and his gaze made Deku feel as if this man could read into his very soul. The stranger spoke. "You're not from here, are you?" he asked, his voice steady and filled with an air of authority. Deku shook his head, still trying to understand what was happening. "No, I don't know where I am. I was just in Musudafu, and then..." "You've been transported here," the man interrupted. "This is the world of demons, and if you wish to survive, you'll need to learn how to fight." The stranger's eyes softened, recognizing Deku's vulnerability. "My name is Giyu Tomioka, Water Hashira. I'll teach you how to protect yourself." Deku, though confused, nodded. He'd always dreamed of becoming stronger, of protecting people. And this stranger's offer, though strange, felt like the right path. Giyu led Deku to the Demon Slayer Corps, where warriors trained to fight the demons that plagued the world. There, Deku learned about the water-breathing techniques, a style that allowed him to control water in ways he'd never imagined. Each form was precise, fluid, and powerful, perfect for someone with Deku's innate will to protect others. Though the training was grueling, Deku's determination never wavered. Each day, he pushed his body beyond its limits, determined to master the techniques. As he trained, he encountered the other Hashira, the elite demon slayers who had their own unique fighting styles. But it was one person in particular who caught his eye, Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira. Shinobu was unlike anyone Deku had met before. She was elegant, graceful, and fiercely intelligent, with a gentle smile that hid the sharpness of a warrior. Her playful demeanor made her stand out, but there was something deeper, something Deku couldn't quite place, that drew him to her. She saw through the mask Deku wore, recognizing the kindness and determination he had within him. "You're better than I expected," Shinobu said one evening as Deku collapsed from exhaustion after a long day of training. "You've got strength in you, I can tell." Deku, panting, smiled weakly. "I just want to protect people, like everyone else here." Shinobu's smile softened. "You'll get there. Just keep pushing yourself." As time passed, Shinobu began to spend more time with Deku, offering him advice and encouragement. Her teasing, while playful, carried a warmth that Deku hadn't felt in a long time. He found himself growing fond of her, not just for her strength, but for the kindness and sincerity she showed him. Shinobu, despite her usual aloofness, found herself intrigued by Deku's quiet determination. There was something about his humble nature and the way he carried himself that made her heart race. But it wasn't just Shinobu who started to notice Deku. As his skills with water breathing grew, so did his presence. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira, found herself captivated by Deku's earnestness and his unwavering spirit. She admired how hard he worked and how he never gave up, no matter how difficult the training became. Mitsuri, with her warm, affectionate nature, began to seek out Deku during breaks, enjoying their light-hearted conversations and moments of laughter. She, too, began to develop feelings for him. Kanao Tsuyuri, the quiet and reserved swordswoman, watched from a distance. Kanao was known for her stoic nature, but something about Deku's determination and his gentle spirit tugged at her heart. She admired how he fought not just for himself, but for others, always putting their needs above his own. Slowly, she found herself becoming more comfortable around him, her heart opening to the idea of being close to him. As Deku continued to train and grow stronger, he couldn't deny the growing feelings he had for these women, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. Each of them had their own unique qualities that drew him in, and he couldn't help but feel a deep affection for all of them. Despite the growing complexity of his emotions, Deku focused on his training, knowing that in this new world, strength was the key to survival. One day, the Demon Slayer Corps received word of a powerful demon terrorizing a nearby village. Gyu, Shinobu, Mitsuri, Kanao, and Deku were all dispatched to eliminate the threat. As they arrived, the demon appeared, its twisted form filled with dark energy. The battle was intense, with the demon using powerful attacks that left the ground shaking. Deku, now a skilled water-breathing practitioner, fought alongside the Hashira, his movements fluid and precise. The demon was fast, and despite Deku's skill, it managed to land a powerful blow that sent him flying into the air. He crashed into the ground, his body bruised and battered. Shinobu rushed to his side, her eyes wide with concern. "Midoriya," she called out, her voice breaking. "I'm fine," Deku groaned, struggling to get up. "I won't give up. I can't." Before he could finish his sentence, Shinobu placed a gentle hand on his cheek. "You don't have to fight alone," she whispered, her voice soft yet filled with emotion. "We're all here for you." Deku felt a warmth spread through him at her words, but the battle was far from over. With a fierce determination, he rose to his feet, his eyes burning with a new resolve. "I'll protect everyone," he muttered to himself. Using all of his strength, Deku unleashed a powerful water-breathing technique, the 11th form, Dead Calm, a devastating move that sent the demon reeling. The battle ended swiftly, the demon vanquished by the combined efforts of the Corps. As the dust settled, the group stood together, breathing heavily but victorious. Later that night, as the moon shone brightly over the mountains, Shinobu approached Deku. She had always been playful, but there was a new tenderness in her eyes. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "You're incredible," she said, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Deku's heart race. "I've never met someone like you." Deku felt his heart skip a beat. I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted, his voice low. Shinobu's smile deepened, and before Deku could react, she leaned in and kissed him gently on the forehead. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Mitsuri and Kanao, who had been watching from a distance, exchanged glances. They saw the bond between Deku and Shinobu growing stronger, but they also knew how deeply they cared for him. As the days passed, it became clear that Deku had formed meaningful connections with all of them, connections that ran deeper than simple admiration. One evening, after a long day of training, Mitsuri, Kanao, and Shinobu gathered around Deku, each of them smiling in their own way. They knew that Deku had something special about him, something that made them all care for him in ways they hadn't expected. "I never thought I'd feel like this," Mitsuri said, her voice full of affection. "But you make me feel so alive." Kanao, usually quiet, nodded. "You've shown me what it means to fight for others. I've never felt this way before." Deku, overwhelmed by their feelings, looked at each of them. "I don't know how to explain it, but I care for each of you, deeply." Shinobu smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "We know, Midoriya," she said softly. "And we'll always be here, fighting beside you." As the group stood together under the stars, the bond between Deku and the women of the Demon Slayer Corps grew even stronger. It wasn't just their shared fight against the demons that united them, it was the love and respect they had for one another. Together, they would face whatever battles came their way, knowing that no matter how difficult the path ahead, they would always have each other. Days passed in the mountains, and the Demon Slayer Corps continued to train and fight together. The bond between Izuku Midoriya and the women of the Corps grew deeper with each passing day. Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao had each found something special in him, and Deku, though overwhelmed by the attention, found himself drawn to each of them for different reasons. Their personalities, their strength, their warmth, everything about them seemed to fit together, like pieces of a puzzle. But the battles they faced were far from over, and Deku had to be ready for whatever came next. One night, after a long day of training with Gyu, Deku stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sprawling valley below. His mind was racing. He thought about the future, about the demons, the people he had promised to protect, and the women who had come to mean so much to him. He knew that as strong as he had become, there was still so much more to learn. Still, a part of him couldn't shake the sense of uncertainty. The demons they fought were powerful, and there were still many dangers lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, he felt a soft touch on his shoulder. He turned to find Shinobu standing beside him, her violet eyes gazing out at the horizon. "Is something bothering you?" she asked, her voice gentle but filled with concern. Deku smiled faintly. "Just thinking about everything. About how much more I need to do to keep everyone safe. There's so much to learn, and I don't want to let anyone down." Shinobu studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "You've already come so far. I've seen the way you fight, the way you care for others. You're not alone in this. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." Deku looked at her, his heart swelling. Shinobu had always been there, offering her wisdom, her support, and her kindness. It made him feel like he could face anything, so long as she was beside him. And yet, he couldn't ignore the growing feelings he had for her. He wasn't sure if she felt the same way, but he couldn't deny the connection that had formed between them. Before he could speak, a voice broke through his thoughts. "You know, Shinobu is right, Midoriya," Mitsuri said, appearing behind them with her usual cheerful grin. "You're not alone. We've all got your back." Deku turned to find Mitsuri smiling at him, her eyes full of warmth and affection. "Mitsuri," he murmured, feeling a rush of emotions. Mitsuri's open, bubbly nature made it easy for people to feel comfortable around her, and Deku was no exception. Her laughter, her kindness, her passion for protecting people, it all made him feel like he was truly part of something important. Kanao stood a few steps behind Mitsuri, her usual calm demeanor not hiding the faint blush on her face. Her eyes met Deku's, and she gave him a soft nod of approval. "You're stronger than you think, Midoriya. Don't doubt yourself," she said quietly, her voice gentle but filled with sincerity. Deku was overwhelmed. These three women, each so different, but each so strong in their own way, had become an essential part of his life. His heart beat faster as he realized that the feelings they had for him were not one-sided. But how could he choose between them? They were all so important to him, and he couldn't bear the thought of hurting any of them. As if sensing his inner turmoil, Shinobu placed a hand gently on his arm. "You don't have to choose, Midoriya," she said with a smile. "None of us expect that. We're not asking you to decide between us. We just want you to be happy, and to be with us as we fight together." Her words made Deku's heart swell with emotion. He had never imagined that he could have such strong bonds with so many people, especially with the women he admired so deeply. But Shinobu's words were true, he didn't have to choose. They were all with him, and together, they would face whatever came next. The next few days were spent preparing for another mission. A new demon had been terrorizing a nearby village, and the Corps was being sent to deal with it. The night before their departure, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The air was cooler than usual, and the stars above seemed brighter as the group gathered to discuss their plans. "I'll handle the front lines," Gyu said, his voice calm as usual. "Midoriya, I want you to use your new techniques to hold the demon in place. We'll take it down together." Deku nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle in his chest. He had trained hard, and he knew his skills had improved, but he couldn't help feeling nervous. This demon was rumored to be strong, stronger than anything they had fought before. As they prepared for battle, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao approached him. Each of them wore an expression of quiet confidence, but there was something else in their eyes, something deeper, something that conveyed their trust in him. "We believe in you, Midoriya," Kanao said softly, her voice steady. "You've grown so much since you came here. You'll be fine." Mitsuri flashed her radiant smile. "We've got your back, and no matter what happens, you're not alone." Shinobu stepped forward, her expression warm but focused. "We fight together, and we'll make sure you're safe." Deku's heart filled with gratitude, and for the first time since he had arrived in this world, he felt a sense of peace. He wasn't just fighting to protect people anymore. He was fighting for these women, for the people who had become his family. He wouldn't let them down. The mission was perilous. The demon they faced was fierce, its form a grotesque mix of man and monster, its dark powers overwhelming. The battle was fierce, and the air crackled with tension as the Corps fought with all their might. Deku moved with fluid precision, using his water-breathing techniques to strike the demon, his body dancing through the air with each movement. Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao fought alongside him, each of them using their unique abilities to wear the demon down. In the heat of the battle, the demon unleashed a devastating attack, targeting Deku with a brutal strike that could have killed him. But before the blow could land, Shinobu was there, deflecting it with her poison-infused blade. Mitsuri followed up with a powerful attack, her sword slashing through the air with deadly grace. Kanao's swift movements overwhelmed the demon, pushing it back. Together, they struck as one. The demon was finally defeated, its form crumbling to dust under their combined strength. After the battle, as they stood amidst the wreckage of the fight, their breaths heavy and their bodies sore, Deku felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had fought alongside these warriors, these women who had become so much more than allies to him. They were his family, his strength, and they had helped him grow in ways he never thought possible. Shinobu smiled at him, her violet eyes sparkling with pride. You did well, Midoriya. I knew you had it in you. Mitsuri hugged him tightly, her laughter ringing in the air. You were amazing. I'm so proud of you. Kanao, quieter than the others, placed a hand on his shoulder. We're all stronger together. Don't forget that. As the sun began to set, casting a soft glow over the battlefield, Deku looked at the three of them, his heart full. They were right. He didn't have to choose between them. Their love and support, their friendship, their strength, it was enough. They had become a part of his heart, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following the battle felt like a dream to Deku. He had never imagined that he would form such powerful bonds with people, especially not with the fierce and capable women of the Demon Slayer Corps. His relationship with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao deepened further, and with each passing day, his feelings for them grew stronger. They weren't just his comrades now, they were his heart, his strength, and the reason he fought so fiercely. As they continued their missions, there was a sense of unspoken understanding between them. Deku knew that each of them had been through their own struggles, their own pain, but they still stood strong, fighting for a better world. And he wanted to do the same. Not just for them, but for everyone. He wanted to protect them, and the people of this world, with all his heart. One afternoon, as they prepared for another demon hunt, Deku found himself standing alone on the training grounds. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the mountains. He could hear the sound of the others preparing in the distance, but for a moment, he was lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, a soft voice interrupted his reverie. Midoriya. Deku turned to see Shinobu walking toward him, her violet eyes gentle but filled with something more. Her presence was always calming, yet there was an intensity about her that Deku had come to appreciate more with each passing day. You've been quiet lately, she said, standing beside him. Is everything alright? Deku hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yeah, I'm just thinking. About everything, I guess. About how far I've come, and how much I still need to learn. Shinobu smiled softly, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. You've grown so much, Midoriya. I'm proud of you, but you don't have to do this alone. We're here for you, always. Her words struck a chord deep within him. He had always felt like an outsider, like he had to prove himself. But in this world, with these people, he felt like he truly belonged. And yet, a part of him still felt the weight of his responsibility, the need to be strong for everyone. I know, Deku said quietly. But sometimes, I don't know if I can protect everyone. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Shinobu's eyes softened, and she stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You are strong enough, Midoriya. Not because of your power, but because of your heart. You fight because you care. And that's what makes you stronger than anyone else. Deku felt his chest tighten at her words. There was something about her gentle yet firm nature that made him feel at peace, something that made him want to be the best version of himself. Before he could respond, Mitsuri appeared, her face lit up with her usual cheerful smile. Hey, don't leave me out, she said, walking up beside them. We're a team, remember? We'll all fight together. You're not alone, Deku. Her words were like a breath of fresh air. Mitsuri's boundless energy and positive attitude had a way of lifting Deku's spirits, even in the most difficult moments. Kanao, quiet as ever, joined them as well, standing silently at Deku's other side. Her calm presence was a contrast to Mitsuri's enthusiasm, but there was something in the way she looked at him, something that spoke volumes without needing words. It was a look of trust, of support, and of something deeper, something unspoken. Thanks, all of you, Deku said, his voice filled with emotion. I don't know what I'd do without you. Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao all exchanged glances before smiling at him, each in their own way. The connection between them was undeniable. Deku felt a sense of gratitude and warmth, his heart swelling as he realized just how much these women meant to him, and how much he meant to them. The next mission was their most challenging yet. The demon they faced was a ruthless one, a demon that had taken the lives of many innocent people. Its strength was unlike anything they had encountered before. As they approached the village, the air was thick with tension. The demon's presence was overwhelming, and the people had already begun to flee, terrified for their lives. Deku, though nervous, stood tall, ready to protect them. He knew he couldn't let fear hold him back, not with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao by his side. They were his strength, just as he was theirs. The battle was brutal, the demon was fast, and its attacks were powerful. Deku used every technique he had learned, his water-breathing forms flowing with precision as he moved through the battle. He was no longer the inexperienced boy who had arrived in this world. He was a warrior, one who fought with everything he had. Shinobu was at his side, her poison-infused blades striking with deadly accuracy. She was graceful, her movements like a dance, but each strike was filled with lethal intent. Mitsuri fought with unmatched passion, her sword cutting through the air in a blur of speed and power. Kanao moved like a shadow, swift and deadly, her focus unshakable as she struck from all angles. Despite their strength, the demon was relentless. It took everything they had to keep up, and Deku found himself struggling to keep pace. But then, as he glanced around, he saw the women fighting beside him, their unwavering resolve pushing him forward. He wasn't alone. In that moment, everything clicked. His water-breathing techniques flowed with an ease he had never felt before. He was no longer fighting just for himself. He was fighting for them. For Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. And that thought gave him the strength to push past his limits. Water-breathing, 11th form, dead calm. Deku shouted, unleashing his most powerful move yet. The force of the strike was enough to send the demon reeling. But it wasn't enough. The demon recovered quickly and lunged at them, its claws aimed at Shinobu. Without thinking, Deku moved, positioning himself between her and the demon. His body was bruised, and his strength was waning, but there was no hesitation in his heart. The demon's claws reached out for him, but Shinobu's voice rang in his ears, sharp and clear, "Don't be reckless, Midoriya." In the same instant, Mitsuri and Kanao struck in unison, their combined power cutting through the demon's defenses. The final blow was delivered with such force that the demon was finally vanquished, its body disintegrating into nothingness. The battle was over. Exhausted but alive, the group stood together, the weight of the fight settling in. Shinobu stepped forward, her eyes filled with pride as she looked at Deku. "You did it," she said softly. "You protected us." Mitsuri wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug, her voice full of excitement. "That was amazing, Deku. You really gave it your all." Kanao's usual quiet demeanor didn't mask the smile on her face as she looked at him. "We knew you could do it." Deku, still breathing heavily, smiled. "We did it, together. I couldn't have done it without you." The bond between them had grown even stronger in that moment. It was more than just fighting side by side, it was the trust, the love, and the understanding that they shared. Deku had become a part of their world, and they had become a part of his. As they made their way back to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, Deku couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace. He had found a family in this world, a family that supported him, that believed in him, and that loved him in ways he had never imagined. And as long as he was with them, he knew he could face anything. Together, they were unstoppable. As the days went by, the bond between Deku and the women of the Demon Slayer Corps grew even stronger. The warmth and camaraderie that had been forming between them solidified into something deeper. Despite the dangers they faced on every mission, there was an unspoken understanding that they would always protect one another, no matter the cost. But it was more than just protection, it was the trust they had built, the emotional closeness that came from fighting side by side. One evening, after a successful mission, Deku sat near the campfire, the others gathered around him. The night was quiet, save for the crackling of the flames and the distant sounds of the forest. Mitsuri was playfully poking at the fire, Shinobu was observing the surroundings, and Kanao sat in her usual quiet manner beside Deku, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Hey, Midoriya," Mitsuri spoke up, her tone light and teasing. "You're getting better at handling your water-breathing techniques. Maybe I should start calling you Water Master, or something. What do you think, Shinobu?" Shinobu chuckled softly, a rare, warm sound. "I think Mitsuri might be getting a little too carried away," she replied with a smile that softened her usually sharp features. Deku scratched his head, feeling the familiar warmth spreading across his cheeks at the compliment. I still have a long way to go. There's so much to improve, especially with all the techniques Gyu-sensei has taught me. Kanao, who hadn't spoken much that evening, suddenly turned her head towards Deku, her eyes meeting his with a rare openness. You've improved a lot already, she said quietly, her usual soft-spoken words carrying a depth of sincerity. The way you fought in the last battle. You fought with everything. You've already surpassed where you were when you first arrived here. Deku blinked in surprise, touched by her words. The calmness in Kanao's voice always made her words seem even more meaningful. Thank you, Kanao, he replied, his voice sincere. I couldn't have done it without all of you. You've all taught me so much. I'll keep getting stronger. Shinobu, who had been watching the exchange with a soft gaze, nodded in agreement. It's true, she said. Each of us has our own strength, and together we make each other stronger. Your power, Midoriya, isn't just in your breathing techniques. It's in your heart, in the way you fight for others. Deku's chest tightened slightly at her words. It wasn't the first time he had heard something like that, but hearing it from Shinobu, someone he admired deeply, felt different. There was something about her presence, the way she spoke, the way she always carried herself with both grace and strength, that left him in awe. As the night wore on, the group slowly settled into a peaceful silence, the warmth of the fire and the quiet sounds of nature surrounding them. But there was a sense of something deeper in the air, something that had been building for a long time. It was an invisible thread connecting them all, something beyond the physical fights they endured together. Deku didn't know how to express it, but he felt a profound connection to each of them. Shinobu, always observant, noticed Deku's lingering gaze. Her expression softened, and she approached him, sitting beside him on the grass. Mitsuri and Kanao gave them a knowing look, their eyes hinting at a mutual understanding that only strengthened the bond between them. Midoriya, Shinobu began, her voice quieter now. There's something I've been meaning to say. Deku turned his head, his heart racing as he looked into her eyes. She was so calm, so composed, yet in that moment, there was something different in her gaze. Something tender, something that made Deku's chest tighten with anticipation. I've always fought for what's right, Shinobu continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. But I've never fought for something this important. Until now. She paused, her violet eyes locking with his. I fight for you, Midoriya. For all of you. Because I've come to care for you in ways I never thought possible. Deku's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced, trying to process her words. He had always respected Shinobu, admired her strength and wisdom, but hearing her speak like this, it struck a chord in him he hadn't expected. I care about you, too, Deku said, his voice barely above a whisper. He could feel his cheeks burning, but he didn't care. The feelings that had been building for so long were finally spilling out, and he didn't want to hide them anymore. I never thought I'd have people like you by my side. But now that I do, I want to protect you, all of you, with everything I have. Shinobu smiled softly, a faint blush on her cheeks as well. We know, Midoriya, and we'll be here, fighting by your side, no matter what. At that moment, Mitsuri and Kanao quietly joined them, their expressions soft and understanding. They each sat down beside Deku, and the atmosphere felt heavier with unspoken emotions. Mitsuri, always the one to break the silence with her radiant energy, leaned over and placed a hand on Deku's shoulder. We all care for you, Deku, she said with a smile, her eyes shining with affection. You don't have to carry the world alone. We're here to help you, always. Kanao nodded, her eyes reflecting the same sincerity. You've always been there for us. Now, we'll always be there for you. Deku's heart swelled with emotion as he looked at the three of them, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. The love, the support, the bond between them was undeniable. It wasn't just the fighting that had brought them together, it was something deeper, something that connected their hearts. They had all come to care for each other, and no matter how dangerous the battles ahead would be, they would face them as a united front. That night, as they sat around the campfire, the bond between Deku and the women of the Demon Slayer Corps grew even stronger. It was a bond not just formed by the necessity of survival, but by something deeper, love, trust, and the unshakable belief that they were stronger together. As the stars twinkled overhead, Deku allowed himself to relax for the first time in a long while. He had always fought alone, always carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. But now, with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao by his side, he knew he didn't have to do it alone. He had found something more precious than anything he could have imagined, a family, bound by love, and ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Together, they would protect each other, and together, they would create a future worth fighting for. As time passed, the bond between Deku and the women of the Demon Slayer Corps only grew deeper. They continued to face powerful demons, some more deadly than others, and each battle solidified their connection. Deku's strength, honed through rigorous training and his experiences in this new world, was growing by leaps and bounds. His water-breathing techniques, which had once seemed foreign and difficult, were now second nature to him. He was no longer just a newcomer, he was becoming a key member of the Demon Slayer Corps, someone everyone could rely on. But it wasn't just his fighting skills that had evolved. Deku had become more in tune with his emotions, more confident in his relationships with the women around him. Shinobu's calm and composed nature, Mitsuri's infectious enthusiasm, and Kanao's quiet yet unwavering strength had all touched something deep within him. He had come to realize that they weren't just his allies, they were his family, his reasons for fighting. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling mission, the group found themselves in a small village, resting for the night. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. Deku, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao were sitting together outside a small inn, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Shinobu, as always, was the first to break the silence. "Midoriya," she said, her tone soft but serious. "I've been thinking about our future." Deku turned to her, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering toward the horizon. "The demons, we will eventually face the ones at the very top, the demons responsible for all the suffering in this world. The battle will be difficult, and we may not all come out of it alive." The weight of her words hung in the air, and for a moment, the group fell silent. It was something they had all known deep down, but hearing it out loud was a sobering reminder of the stakes. Deku, however, wasn't afraid. He had faced death before, and he would face it again. But this time, it was different. This time, he wasn't alone. "I understand," Deku said, his voice steady. "But I'll do whatever it takes. For all of you." Mitsuri smiled warmly, her bright eyes sparkling with affection. "That's why we fight together, Deku," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "No one fights alone." Kanao nodded in agreement, her quiet but determined presence a constant source of strength. "We are all in this together," she said simply, her gaze softening as she looked at him. The bond between them, already strong, seemed to deepen with every passing word. Deku felt a surge of gratitude for the women around him. They were more than just allies. They were the reason he kept fighting, the reason he pushed past his limits. As the night wore on, they found themselves sitting under the stars, the peaceful quiet of the village surrounding them. Deku looked up at the sky, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. Despite the chaos of their world, despite the demons and the battles they would face, he had found a sense of peace in this strange place. A peace he had never known in his own world. "I'm glad I ended up here," Deku said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what I would have done without you all." Shinobu's eyes softened as she looked at him, her usual sharpness giving way to something more vulnerable. "You've always been strong, Midoriya," she said, her voice gentle. "But now, you're not alone. We'll always be with you." Mitsuri, her cheerful energy never fading, leaned over and wrapped an arm around Deku's shoulders. "You're stuck with us now, Deku. We're your family." Kanao didn't speak, but her presence spoke volumes. She leaned closer to him, her hand brushing his as if to reassure him without words. Deku could feel her trust, her unspoken affection, and it made his heart swell with emotion. The moment was brief, but it was enough. In that quiet moment under the stars, surrounded by the women who had become his closest companions, Deku realized something. It wasn't just about being strong, or fighting for a cause, it was about the people he cared for, the people who cared for him in return. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the four of them continued to fight side by side. But something else had changed. The unspoken affection between Deku and each of the women had deepened, transforming into something more. It wasn't just loyalty or friendship anymore. There was a tenderness in their interactions, a warmth in the way they looked at him, a softness in their voices when they spoke to him. It was during one of their more difficult missions, when they were up against a particularly dangerous demon that had been terrorizing a small town, that Deku realized just how much these women meant to him. The battle had been fierce, and although they had managed to defeat the demon, the cost had been high. Deku had been severely injured, his body battered from the fight. But even in his weakened state, his thoughts were not on the pain he felt. It was Shinobu who had rushed to his side first, her expression worried but composed. "You pushed yourself too far," she said, her voice filled with concern as she helped him sit up. "You're injured. I'll be fine," Deku said with a wince, trying to reassure her, though his voice was strained. "We did it together." Mitsuri and Kanao soon joined them, both of them visibly shaken but relieved to see Deku alive. Mitsuri, her usual cheeriness dimmed by the intensity of the battle, gave him a soft smile. "You really scared us, Deku. But I'm glad you're okay." Kanao, ever the quiet one, simply placed a hand on his, her touch gentle but firm. Her eyes, though silent, spoke volumes of her feelings. Shinobu, however, had no more words to offer him. Instead, she gently cupped his face in her hands, her violet eyes locking with his. In that moment, all the unspoken emotions that had been building between them seemed to flood to the surface. She leaned in slowly, her breath warm against his cheek as she whispered, "I care about you, Midoriya. More than I've ever let on." Deku's heart raced, his pulse thundering in his ears as he looked into Shinobu's eyes. "I care about you, too," he whispered back, his voice full of emotion. And then, in a moment that felt as if time had stopped, their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. It wasn't rushed or forceful, it was an expression of everything they had both felt but never said. When they pulled away, both of them were slightly flushed, but there was a quiet understanding between them. Mitsuri and Kanao had been silent witnesses to the moment, but neither of them seemed uncomfortable. In fact, Mitsuri was practically glowing with happiness. "You two are so cute," she exclaimed, earning a quiet laugh from Kanao, who simply nodded her approval. Deku felt a rush of warmth spread through him as he looked at all three of them, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. They were no longer just his allies. They were his family, his support, and the ones he had come to love in ways he never thought possible. And with them by his side, he knew there was nothing they couldn't face, no challenge too great. Together, they would continue to fight for a better world, one where they could live in peace, together. As the days continued to pass, the bonds between Deku and the women of the Demon Slayer Corps only strengthened. Their shared experiences and the battles they fought together created a powerful connection, and with each passing day, their feelings for each other deepened. The love that had started as something subtle began to bloom into something undeniable. But as peaceful as their time together seemed, the world of the Demon Slayer Corps was never truly safe. The presence of demons never ceased, and each new battle brought its own challenges. Yet, despite the constant danger, Deku felt a sense of purpose and belonging that he had never experienced before. His strength, fueled by the love and support of Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao, seemed to grow with each passing day. One day, the Corps received word of a particularly powerful demon wreaking havoc in a nearby town. The demon, an upper-rank creature, was known for its cruelty and strength. The higher-ups in the Corps quickly mobilized the best of their fighters, and Deku, along with the women, were sent on the mission to hunt it down. The journey to the town was tense, the weight of the upcoming battle hanging heavily in the air. Shinobu's usual calm demeanor seemed more intense than usual, and Mitsuri, despite her energetic personality, appeared to be taking the mission seriously. Kanao, as always, remained silent, but her presence was a reassuring constant beside Deku. As they approached the town, they could already sense the bloodshed and destruction left in the demon's wake. Buildings had been destroyed, and the air was thick with the scent of death. The streets were eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle of the village. "This demon is different," Shinobu murmured, her eyes scanning the area. "We need to be careful." Deku nodded, his senses on high alert. The weight of the mission was palpable, and though he had faced countless demons before, there was something about this one that felt more menacing. Perhaps it was the anticipation of fighting something so powerful. Or perhaps it was the knowledge that he wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore, he was fighting for the women who had become so important to him. "Stay close," Deku said, his voice steady. "We'll take it down together." With a silent nod from Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao, the group moved deeper into the town, carefully making their way toward the source of the destruction. The closer they got, the more they could feel the oppressive presence of the demon. It was waiting for them, like a predator stalking its prey. And then, without warning, the demon appeared before them, its massive, grotesque form emerging from the shadows. It was a creature of nightmare, its skin twisted and discolored, with eyes that burned with malice. Its aura radiated danger, and it sneered as it saw the demon slayers approach. Well, the demon hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. More little insects to crush beneath my feet. Shinobu's eyes narrowed, her hand gripping the hilt of her sword. We're not here to play games, demon, she said coldly. Prepare to face your end. Deku's muscles tensed as he prepared himself. He wasn't just going to let this demon wreak havoc on the world he now called home. He would fight with everything he had, because that's what the women beside him deserved. In a blur of motion, the battle began. Deku launched forward first, his body moving with the grace and speed of a seasoned warrior. He drew upon the water-breathing techniques that had become second nature to him, each strike a perfect blend of strength and fluidity. His movements were precise, cutting through the air as he expertly evaded the demon's attacks. The demon retaliated with violent swipes of its claws, but Deku was ready. He used the techniques Gyu Tomioka had taught him, his water breathing flowing like an unstoppable river. His water wheel slashed through the demon's attacks, his water surface striking the creature's arm with precision. Each blow left a mark, but the demon was tough, its regenerative abilities making it difficult to land a decisive hit. Deku, look out, Mitsuri cried out from behind him, her voice sharp with concern. The demon, enraged by Deku's attacks, swung its enormous arm in a wide arc, aiming to crush him beneath its weight. But before it could land the blow, Shinobu moved with deadly speed. She darted forward, her insect-breathing techniques bringing a burst of speed as she cut through the demon's defenses, aiming for its weak points. The demon howled in pain, recoiling from Shinobu's poison-coated blades. But it wasn't finished yet. We need to finish this quickly. Shinobu shouted, her expression fierce as she backed off to regain distance. Its regenerative powers are no joke. Deku nodded, his heart racing. He could feel the weight of their situation, but he wasn't going to back down. Not with his friends, his family, fighting alongside him. Kanao, ever silent but always observant, suddenly sprang into action. With her speed and precision, she struck at the demon's legs, forcing it to its knees. The demon screamed in rage, lashing out with ferocity. But Deku was ready. Water breathing, 11th form, dead calm. Deku shouted, his body moving with fluid grace. He summoned the full force of his water breathing, and in an instant, he moved with such speed that it seemed like time itself had slowed down. His sword met the demon's throat in a perfect strike, cutting through its resistance like water through stone. The demon let out one final, tortured scream before its body began to disintegrate, its form crumbling to ash. The battle was over. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was a victorious one. Deku's chest heaved with exertion, and the others stood silently around him, their expressions a mix of relief and pride. Shinobu stepped forward, her violet eyes softening as she looked at him. You did well, Midoriya, she said, her voice low but full of warmth. Mitsuri grinned, her usual energy returning. You were amazing, Deku. That was some crazy speed. Kanao didn't speak, but her eyes shone with approval. Her hand, still resting on his arm, was all the confirmation he needed. Deku, though exhausted, couldn't help but smile. We all did it together. Thank you all for fighting with me. As they walked back to the village, their hearts lightened by the victory, Deku felt a deep sense of contentment. The mission was a success, but more importantly, he had been able to share it with those who mattered most to him. And as they returned to their base, each of them more exhausted than the last, Deku knew that they had all grown even closer. He wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a part of something bigger, something that meant more than anything he had ever known. He had found his place, not just as a warrior, but as someone who was loved, who loved in return. With Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao by his side, he knew that no matter what demons they faced, no matter how difficult the battles became, they would face them together. And, together, they would win. As the days passed, the calm that followed their victory against the powerful demon didn't last long. The constant threat of demons was always looming, and Deku, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao knew that their fight was far from over. Despite the peace they had earned in the moment, the mission ahead loomed larger in their minds, the weight of the Demon Slayer's duty never truly fading. Deku spent much of his time in training, pushing himself even further to perfect his water-breathing techniques and to be the warrior his companions needed him to be. Though he had grown immensely since arriving in the Demon Slayer world, there was always room for improvement, and Deku never rested on his laurels. He trained with Shinobu, who, despite her gentle demeanor, was an unyielding taskmaster when it came to improving his skills. Mitsuri would often join him, her infectious energy pushing him to take his limits even further. And Kanao, though quiet, helped him hone his focus, her patience and ability to see through his struggles guiding him to new levels of mastery. Shinobu had become an even more integral part of Deku's life. Their quiet moments together, whether training or simply sitting in silence under the stars, became a source of comfort for him. Shinobu's wisdom and calmness had become an anchor in his turbulent world. She often teased him for his tendency to push himself too hard, reminding him to take moments for himself. "Midoriya, you're always trying to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes sometimes," Shinobu said one evening as they sat outside, the night sky stretching above them. "Perfection doesn't make a person, strength and determination do." Her words resonated deeply with Deku, who had always strived for perfection ever since he was a child. He looked over at her, offering a soft smile. "Thank you, Shinobu, I'll try to remember that." Mitsuri, ever the cheerful one, also played her part in helping Deku balance his intense training. Her bubbly attitude lightened the mood after the most grueling of missions. "Hey, Deku, after all these intense fights, we need to have some fun, too. You can't just train all the time. Come on, let's have a little sparring match for fun," she would say with a wink, offering him a chance to smile even after the toughest battles. Kanao, though reserved, was a constant source of support. Her quiet presence had become a comforting constant for Deku, and her care for him went beyond words. Whenever he felt like giving up or when his body ached too much, she was there, silently encouraging him through the simplest of gestures, a hand on his shoulder, a quiet smile that reassured him everything would be okay. But one day, everything changed. Word came down from the Demon Slayer Corps that a new, even more dangerous demon had appeared, a demon rumored to be capable of controlling other demons with ease, a threat unlike anything they had faced before. The demon was hiding deep in the mountains, where few had dared to venture, and it was said that it had already wiped out entire villages. Deku knew that this mission would be different. This wasn't just another demon to hunt. This one had the potential to shift the balance of power in the demon world, and it could be the key to understanding how to defeat the Demon King, the ultimate goal of every demon slayer. The team gathered in the briefing room, the mood heavy with the seriousness of the task ahead. The higher-ups in the Corps had made it clear that only the strongest slayers could take on this mission. And so, Deku, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao were chosen to face this new threat together. Shinobu's voice was firm as she outlined their plan. "We need to stay focused. This demon has an ability we've never seen before. It can control other demons like puppets, and it's taken down entire squads before. We'll need to rely on each other more than ever before." Mitsuri was already bouncing on her feet, eager to take on the challenge, but there was a noticeable edge to her energy. "We'll show this demon that we won't be controlled. We'll work together, and we'll win." Kanao, though always composed, nodded in agreement. "We've trained for this. Together, we're unstoppable." Deku took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle over him. He wasn't afraid. He had faced the most terrifying demons before, but this one felt different. There was a palpable sense of danger, of uncertainty, in the air. He couldn't afford to fail. Not when so much was at stake. The group made their way toward the mountains, the journey long and difficult. As they trekked through dense forests and rocky terrain, Deku couldn't help but glance at Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. He could see the determination in their eyes, the resolve to protect the world and each other. As they neared the demon's lair, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. The air was cold, and the sounds of nature had been replaced with an eerie stillness. It felt as if they were walking straight into the mouth of the beast itself. Then, out of nowhere, they were ambushed. A horde of demons, controlled by the demon they were hunting, appeared from the shadows. They moved with unnatural coordination, their eyes glazed over, and their movements eerily synchronized. Deku felt a wave of unease wash over him, but he immediately pushed it aside, focusing on the battle at hand. Stay sharp, Shinobu commanded, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. We need to eliminate these demons quickly, before the main one shows up. Deku nodded, his heart pounding as he leapt into action. He executed his water-breathing techniques with precision, cutting down the demons that rushed at him. The power and grace of his movements were unmatched, but as he moved, he couldn't help but notice how difficult it was to fight against such a coordinated enemy. These demons weren't acting on their own, they were being controlled. Mitsuri, her blade flashing through the air, cut down demon after demon with her signature playful energy. This is fun, she said, though her tone was tinged with seriousness. But we need to be careful. These demons are not like the others. Kanao, ever silent, moved with lethal precision, her movements fluid and deliberate as she struck down one demon after another. Her sharp eyes scanned for weaknesses, guiding the group toward the most effective attacks. Then, from the shadows, the true threat emerged. The demon they had been hunting, a towering figure with glowing eyes and a malicious grin, stepped forward. It was humanoid in shape, but its body was twisted, its skin marred with scars from its many battles. Its control over the lesser demons was evident as they continued to attack in waves, a testament to its overwhelming power. The demon's voice boomed as it spoke, mocking them. You think you can defeat me? I control all of them. All of them bow to me. You'll never win. Shinobu's eyes narrowed, and she stepped forward. We don't need to defeat every demon you control. We just need to defeat you. The battle that ensued was intense. Deku, fueled by his love for the women at his side, and his desire to protect them, fought with everything he had. He moved fluidly, each attack more precise than the last as he faced off against the powerful demon. Shinobu's insect breathing clashed against the demon's own powers, while Mitsuri and Kanao worked together to keep the lesser demons at bay. But the true test came when the demon attempted to use its ability to control Deku's mind. His body froze for a moment, his mind clouded by the demon's power, but his love for Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao kept him grounded. Deku, fight it! Shinobu's voice cut through the fog in his mind, and that's all it took. With a determined roar, Deku broke free of the demon's control. He summoned all his strength, his water-breathing techniques more powerful than ever before. With one final strike, he aimed directly for the demon's heart, severing its control and bringing the demon to its end. As the demon collapsed to the ground, its form disintegrating into nothingness, Deku stood panting, his chest heaving with exhaustion. He looked over at his companions, seeing the relief in their eyes. We did it, Mitsuri said, her voice light but filled with satisfaction. Deku smiled weakly, his eyes meeting Shinobu's. She nodded at him, pride evident in her gaze. You were amazing, Midoriya. We couldn't have done it without you. The battle was over, but Deku knew this was only one chapter in their ongoing fight. There would always be more demons to face, but as long as he had Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao by his side, he knew they could conquer anything. They had become more than just a team, they had become a family, a force that would stand together against the darkness, no matter how powerful it became. And with their love and determination, there was no enemy they couldn't defeat. The aftermath of the battle left the team with a feeling of both triumph and weariness. They had managed to take down a powerful demon and protect the world from yet another devastating threat, but the toll it had taken on them was undeniable. They returned to their base, bruised and exhausted, but their bond was stronger than ever. The quiet moments after the battle gave them time to reflect on how far they had come and how much they had grown together. As they made their way back to the village, Shinobu, always observant, kept a careful eye on Deku. He had pushed himself to the limit during the fight, and while his strength had certainly grown, she couldn't help but worry about his well-being. Deku, you need to rest, Shinobu said, her tone a mix of concern and affection. You're pushing yourself too hard. I can see it in your eyes. Deku gave a faint smile, though it was tinged with exhaustion. I'll be fine, Shinobu. I can't let my guard down. There's still so much more to do. Shinobu's gaze softened as she placed a gentle hand on his arm. I understand, but your body needs time to recover. And more importantly, you need time with us. We're a team, remember? Mitsuri, who had been walking ahead, spun around with her trademark energy. That's right, Deku. You need to let us take care of you sometimes, too. You always take the hardest hits, and we don't want you to burn out. Kanao, who had been walking quietly beside Deku, glanced up at him with a rare, but meaningful, smile. Resting will make you stronger, Deku, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Deku looked at the three women, feeling a warmth spread through him that wasn't just from the physical heat of the day. It was a deeper kind of warmth, the kind that came from knowing he wasn't alone. He had his family now, his team, and they cared for him just as much as he cared for them. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he had to carry everything on his own. I guess I do need to rest, Deku admitted, a small chuckle escaping his lips. You're right, Shinobu. Thank you, all of you. Shinobu smiled warmly, her usual teasing demeanor replaced with genuine care. Good. Now let's head back. We'll take it easy tonight. As they made their way back to the base, they could feel the weight of their battle slowly lifting. Despite the constant danger in the world of the Demon Slayer Corps, there was a sense of peace in these moments together. Even when there was no fighting to be done, the bonds they had forged were unbreakable. The night was peaceful, and the sky was clear, the stars twinkling brightly above them. They set up camp near a river, and the sound of the flowing water filled the air, adding to the tranquility of the moment. Around the campfire, Shinobu and Mitsuri had prepared a meal while Deku sat nearby, watching as they worked together effortlessly. It was a rare sight, Shinobu, who was usually so focused and serious, laughing at Mitsuri's antics as she tried to juggle the cooking utensils. Even Kanao, though she rarely spoke, was sitting with a quiet smile on her face, content with the peaceful moment. Deku watched them all, a sense of gratitude filling his heart. He had never experienced this kind of peace before. In his past life, he had always been so focused on becoming the greatest hero, never imagining a future like this, surrounded by love, support, and people who truly cared for him. As the night wore on, the group sat around the fire, sharing stories and talking about their lives. It wasn't the most exciting conversation, but it was genuine, and for the first time, Deku felt like he truly belonged. Shinobu, Mitsuri suddenly asked, do you think there's any way we can ever really stop the demons for good? Shinobu's smile faded slightly as she stared into the fire. It's hard to say. The demons are an endless force, and their leader is still out there. But we keep fighting. As long as we have each other, we can push forward. Maybe, one day, we'll find a way to end this once and for all. Deku nodded in agreement, his resolve hardening once more. He wasn't going to let the demons win. He would protect his family, no matter the cost. Kanao, still sitting silently, spoke for the first time that evening. We'll protect each other. Together. Deku looked at her, and in her quiet words, he found a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for the world anymore. He was fighting for these people, for the women who had become his closest allies, for the ones who had given him more than just strength, they had given him a reason to keep going. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Deku felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Tomorrow, they would continue their mission. Tomorrow, they would face more demons, more challenges. But for now, in this moment, they were together. And that was all that mattered. The following days passed in a blur of training, small victories, and quiet moments shared between Deku and his companions. Each day, the bond between them grew, and slowly but surely, Deku began to understand just how much he had changed since arriving in the Demon Slayer world. He was no longer just a hero in the making, he was a part of something far greater, something that gave him a sense of purpose beyond his wildest dreams. As the time passed, Deku continued to train with his companions, working harder to master the water-breathing techniques and perfect his ability to use them in battle. But each time they faced new demons, he was reminded of the most important lesson of all: strength wasn't just about power. It was about the people you fought for, the ones who were always by your side. And with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao beside him, Deku knew that there was nothing they couldn't overcome together. The future was uncertain, the battle still ongoing, but as long as they were together, Deku felt a deep sense of peace and love that would carry him through whatever challenges lay ahead. For Deku, this was just the beginning of his new life. And with his family by his side, he knew that he was ready for whatever came next. As the days passed in the Demon Slayer world, Deku grew stronger, both in skill and in his connection to his companions. The bond between him, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao deepened, and with every passing day, their fight against the demons became more than just about survival. It was about fighting for each other, protecting the love and trust they had built together. The Demon Slayer Corps, recognizing Deku's growing strength and ability, entrusted him with increasingly difficult missions. Each time, he faced them head-on, knowing that he could rely on the support of his companions. But as powerful as he had become, he had also started to realize that his true strength wasn't in his abilities alone, it was in the love and loyalty he shared with those around him. His heart was full, not just with his power but with the love he had come to hold for each of the women at his side. One day, after a particularly grueling battle with a demon who had been terrorizing a nearby village, the group gathered back at their base, exhausted but victorious. Deku sat down by the fire, wiping the sweat from his forehead, his body aching from the intense combat. His heart, however, was still racing, not from the battle, but from the constant worry that came with it, the worry that he might lose one of the people who meant so much to him. Shinobu approached him first, her expression soft as she crouched down beside him. "Deku, you were amazing out there," she said, her voice soothing. "You've come so far. I'm proud of you." He looked up at her, his green eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. You've all been there for me, more than I could have ever asked for." Shinobu smiled, her usual calmness evident even after the fierce battle. "We fight together. You're not alone, Deku. You never will be." Mitsuri and Kanao joined them a moment later, both of them looking just as exhausted but no less determined. Mitsuri, ever the upbeat one, sat down beside Deku and ruffled his hair playfully. "Hey, what do you say we take a break tomorrow and have some fun? You know, take a little detour from all this serious stuff. We deserve it after all these demons we've been taking down." Deku couldn't help but chuckle, the sound genuine despite the weight of their recent battle. "I'd love that, Mitsuri. A break sounds perfect right now." Kanao, who had been quieter than usual, gave him a soft, almost imperceptible smile. "We'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry." Deku felt his heart swell with affection. They were more than just his allies, they were his family, the people he cherished above all else. In his previous world, he had never felt such a deep, unwavering connection to anyone. But now, with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao by his side, he understood that the power of love and companionship could be just as strong as any technique or battle skill. The next day, they all took Mitsuri's suggestion to heart and spent the day together. They traveled to a nearby village to rest and recover, enjoying the simple pleasures of life, eating good food, relaxing by the river, and sharing stories. It was a brief escape from the harsh realities of their world, but it was a welcome one. As they sat by the river, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao gathered around Deku. He was exhausted from the previous day's battle, but the peaceful atmosphere allowed him to truly unwind for the first time in what felt like ages. "Deku, have you thought about your future?" Shinobu asked, her voice gentle. She had always been the thoughtful one, the one who would ask questions that made him pause and reflect. Deku looked at her, surprised by the question. He hadn't really thought about it, at least, not in a way that had anything to do with the future beyond his next battle. "I guess I've been so focused on the fight, on protecting everyone. I haven't really thought much about the future after all this." Shinobu nodded thoughtfully. "It's important to think ahead, too. To know what you're fighting for beyond just survival." Mitsuri grinned, nudging Deku lightly. "Well, I think it's obvious what Deku's fighting for. He's fighting for all of us, right?" Deku's heart skipped a beat at her words. Mitsuri's playful tone softened the impact, but there was truth behind her words. He was fighting for them, each of them. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his love for them was growing deeper every day. Kanao, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "We'll always be by your side, Deku. No matter what happens, we're in this together." The warmth in Kanao's voice struck something deep within him. It wasn't just the firelight or the peace of the moment, it was the knowledge that no matter how dangerous their world was, they had each other. And that made all the difference. The days turned into weeks, and their bond only continued to grow stronger. They faced more demons, more battles, and each time, Deku found himself growing in strength. But more importantly, he was growing in love. The women around him had become his anchors in the storm. With Shinobu's wisdom, Mitsuri's joy, and Kanao's quiet support, Deku had found something more powerful than any breathing technique or battle skill. He had found a family. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Shinobu turned to Deku with a soft smile. "Deku, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," she began. The seriousness in her tone caught Deku off guard. What is it? He asked, his heart suddenly racing. Shinobu looked down, gathering her thoughts before meeting his gaze. I care about you more than just as a fellow demon slayer, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. I think I've known for a while now. I care for you deeply, Deku. More than I thought was possible. Deku felt a rush of emotions flood over him. He had known that his feelings for Shinobu were growing, but hearing her say it aloud made his heart soar. He reached out, taking her hand in his, and smiled warmly. I care about you too, Shinobu. More than I can put into words. Mitsuri, ever the one to keep things light, grinned and teased them. Ooh, I see what's happening here. Deku, you're not just a great fighter, huh? Deku blushed but laughed softly. I didn't expect this, but yes, I care about all of you so much. Kanao, looking as serene as always, spoke in her calm voice, we care about you too, Deku. It's why we fight so hard. Not just for the world, but for you. Deku's heart swelled with emotion, and he realized then that no matter what trials they would face ahead, he had something precious to protect. They were his strength, his purpose, his family. He would do anything to keep them safe. And as the days passed, with each mission and each quiet moment, the love between them continued to grow, stronger than any demon, more enduring than any threat. Together, they were unstoppable, and together, they would face whatever challenges the future held, united in love and loyalty. Deku wasn't just fighting for the world anymore. He was fighting for his family, for Shinobu, Mitsuri, Kanao, and the life they had built together. And as long as they were by his side, there was nothing that could stand in their way. The days continued to pass with the usual rhythm of missions and rest, but there was an undeniable shift in the air. The bond between Deku and his companions had evolved beyond friendship, beyond duty, it had become something far deeper, something that was built on trust, understanding, and, most importantly, love. Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao had each found their way into Deku's heart, and they had come to realize just how much they meant to him. But there was still one more challenge left to face, something far greater than any demon they had encountered before. One evening, as they sat together in their usual spot by the fire, a new mission arrived, one that would take them directly to the heart of the Demon Lord's forces. Their enemy, the leader of the demons, had been growing stronger, and his grip on the world had begun to tighten. The time had come to face him head-on. Deku stood up, determination burning in his eyes. His companions stood beside him, each of them ready to follow him into whatever came next. But this time, there was something different in the air. They had been through so much together, and the thought of facing the Demon Lord made them all aware of just how much they had to lose. Shinobu, as always, was the first to speak. Deku, you've grown stronger, but you've also become more important to us than you know. This fight, it won't be easy. But no matter what happens, we'll be with you. Mitsuri nodded with a fierce smile. We're ready, Deku. No one's going to take you away from us. Not now, not ever. Kanao, though still quiet, gave him a look that spoke volumes. It was a look of unwavering support, one that reassured him that they would fight together until the very end. Deku felt a deep sense of peace settle in his chest. No matter what awaited them in this final battle, he knew one thing for certain, he was no longer just fighting for the world. He was fighting for the women who had become his family. And he would do anything to protect them. The journey to the Demon Lord's lair was long and treacherous. The landscape grew darker, more foreboding as they traveled. But even in the face of such danger, Deku felt a sense of calm wash over him. The bond he shared with Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao was unshakable. Together, they were unstoppable. Finally, they reached the Demon Lord's fortress, a towering, ominous structure that seemed to pulse with a dark, malevolent energy. The air was thick with the scent of blood and death. The time for hesitation was over. They had come to end this. As they entered the fortress, the Demon Lord appeared before them, his presence overwhelming. His eyes gleamed with malice as he looked at Deku and the women standing by his side. So, you've finally arrived, the Demon Lord sneered. The one who dares to challenge me. Deku stepped forward, his resolve firm. This ends today, he said, his voice calm but filled with conviction. You've hurt too many people. No one else will suffer because of you. The Demon Lord laughed darkly. You think you can defeat me? You're nothing but children playing at heroes. With a flash of his dark powers, the battle began. The Demon Lord's attacks were devastating, but Deku and his companions fought with all their might. Shinobu's poison techniques, Mitsuri's unmatched speed, Kanao's sharp precision, they were a force to be reckoned with. But Deku was the one who bore the brunt of the Demon Lord's fury. His water-breathing techniques had become second nature to him, and with every strike, he pushed the Demon Lord back. Yet, for all his strength, he knew it would take more than just power to win this fight. He needed the strength of his companions, the love and trust they had shared. And he was willing to risk everything for them. As the battle raged on, the Demon Lord became more desperate, his attacks more erratic. Finally, with a combination of Deku's water techniques and the combined efforts of Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao, they broke through the Demon Lord's defenses. With a final, decisive strike, Deku landed. The blow that ended the battle. The Demon Lord crumpled to the ground, his power dissipating as he was consumed by the very darkness that had sustained him for so long. The fortress, once a symbol of evil, began to crumble around them. The battle was over. Deku stood, breathing heavily, as his companions gathered around him. The weight of the fight, of everything they had been through, finally settled in. The Demon Lord was gone, and the world was safe once again. Shinobu placed a hand on Deku's shoulder, her voice soft yet filled with pride. "You did it, Deku. We did it." Mitsuri beamed, her energy infectious. "You were amazing out there. I knew you could do it." Kanao stepped forward, her usual calmness tempered with an emotion Deku had come to cherish. "We're proud of you, Deku." Deku looked at them, his heart full of gratitude. He had always dreamed of being a hero, but now he realized that his true strength came from the people around him. The love and support of Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao had been his anchor, and together, they had achieved the impossible. As the ruins of the Demon Lord's fortress began to collapse around them, the group made their way out, the knowledge of their victory settling in. They had faced the greatest evil the world had known, and they had won. In the days that followed, peace slowly began to return to the world. Demons were no longer a constant threat, and the Demon Slayer Corps could rest. But for Deku, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao, life had changed forever. They had forged a bond that was stronger than anything else, and they knew they would never be apart again. Deku, now not just a hero, but a man who had found his family in this strange new world, stood by the river one evening, watching the sun set. The women were with him, each of them standing close, each of them a part of his life in ways he had never imagined. Shinobu stood beside him, her voice gentle as she spoke. "Deku, we've been through so much. But now, we can finally live in peace." Deku smiled, his heart full. "Yeah, we can live for each other, now." Mitsuri laughed, nudging him with her shoulder. "And have fun too, right?" Kanao simply nodded, a serene smile on her face. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the four of them stood there together, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. They had come through the darkness, and now, with love and loyalty, they had found their light. This was their new beginning. And with that, our story comes to an end for today. We hope you enjoyed this journey with Deku, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Kanao. What do you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Your opinions mean the world to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. As we wrap things up, we want to take a moment to wish you all an amazing new year. May this new year bring you endless joy, success, and happiness. Thank you for all your support, and we look forward to bringing you more thrilling stories in the future. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep shining. See you next time.